All right, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your lunch. And forget about sleep. So forget everything you just heard about sleep. We're not going to think about sleep right now, but that's good advice on making sure when we're done, you sleep well tonight. So what we're going to do now is keep moving, keep building on some of the things that we started to develop. And we're going to look at team culture. So how can we use reflection to build the right kind of environment or team culture? And this is something that I see as a priority for a lot of coaches and programs all over the world. They really ask a lot of questions about team culture, team environment. How do I create that right kind of environment? And I was doing a study with championship ice hockey coaches in Canada recently, in the United States, and we were asking them about specific moments in competition, specifically championship games, and asking them what types of things do they say to their athletes in those big moments, those championship moments. And it's interesting, this is actually a quote from the coach of the team that won the national championship in the United States in 2015. And he said, you know what, our culture helped us win the game. And I said, what does that mean? And because we were expecting him to say, I did all these really unique things before the championship match, or in between stoppages in play, or in between periods in that sport you can stop. And he said, no, nothing different at that point, because we create the right environment all the way through the whole season. The preseason, the off-season, the in-season. So when we get to that championship match, we just do more of the same. And that's all built into our culture, all everyday things. I thought, very good lesson. And it got me thinking about why culture seems to matter so much, or team environment seems to matter so much. And when you look across all different fields, and you look at how we try and change people. And oftentimes as coaches, we're in the people changing business. We're trying to change people, get them to think different, act different, feel different. But changing people is really hard. And especially if you're working with older athletes, adolescents, teenagers, adults. Man, they've had 20 years to become who they are, and you think you're going to change them. You're not going to change them. But what you can change is the environment. And that's really what you should focus on changing anyways, because we know from research in all different fields that changing people is a futile effort. It doesn't work. But changing environments to change people does work. And so, for example, I use this picture here. Think of people like water. Water takes the shape of the environment that you pour it into the container that you pour it into. If you take water and you pour it into a shallow dish, it will be shallow. If you take water and you pour it into a flower vase, it will be tall and skinny. So the way you shape your container will dictate the shape your athletes take, and the way they behave and the way they act. And for example, in physical activity or health promotion, if you want to get people to be more active, to move more, it's a big issue in a lot of countries with obesity, you don't try and change them. You change the environment they live in, and the behavior will follow. So if you give them nice parks and nice lighted sidewalks, and they see other people exercising, they will exercise. So you change the environment to change the behavior. This is a really important lesson for us as coaches. So here's a moment. I'm going to show you, this is a real moment with a basketball coach, a very famous basketball coach in Canada. She coaches women's basketball. And I'm going to show you something that happened to her early in her career. And then I want you at your table to decide, what would you do? What would you do in this moment? Okay, I'll read it. There's a lot of information there. So, on my way to winning a national championship, we got invited to compete against a team in Argentina, the women's national team in Argentina. This was part of a training camp the Argentinians were holding to prepare for the World Championship. The night before we were to leave from Canada to Argentina, I received notice of possible rule violations with my players. I was livid, I was really angry, and immediately called in my two captains and asked them if this was true. They said yes. I told them to gather the players to my office. While we were waiting for our players, I debated with my staff, what do we do? Winning would be a breakthrough not only for our team, but equally for players trying to make the Olympic team. So the background here is she's a young coach. She took a team that was worst in the country and led them to a national championship in her 5th or sixth year. So they finally have some success. And now they're getting invited to play other teams around the world. She's getting identified as maybe a future national team or Olympic team coach. This is a big moment for her and her team. And the Argentinian team, which is highly ranked in the world, invited them to come and play in an exhibition. So this is a big moment. And right the night before you're about to leave, you hear some of your players broke the team rules. So now as the players are going out to gather the team, she has a moment. Very quickly she has to decide, what do I do? What do I do in this moment? Do I say, you know what, everybody, we're going to Argentina, we're leaving tomorrow, we'll deal with this when I get back? Do I make them play? She said, do I make them play because we have a contract and then suspend them when we get back? Or do I wait till the athletes come back and see which athletes? Are these our starters, our best athletes? If they're our best athletes, you know what, we'll wait till we get back. If they're players who don't play much, maybe I'll leave them here. So I'll give you 2 minutes at your table. What would you do in this moment? And then I'll share with you what she did. Okay, so you've had a few minutes to think about that. Just for fun, show of hands, how many people said the first option? Well, they're going to travel with us. We're going, but you're not playing. Well, you can look around the room. How many people said number 2? You're going to play because we owe it to Argentina. They're paying a lot of money for us to come and get a good game. So they're going to play and I'll deal with it when we get back. Many people said 2? A few, yeah. And then who said 3? Let's see who the players are. I want to know who it is first. Okay, so we have all 3 options, and maybe you have other options too. There's lots of things. So this is a critical moment as a coach, and being able to reflect quickly on what should I do. But really, there's no decision to make here. I'll show you what she did. This is a no-brainer. That's a term we use in the United States. There's nothing to decide. This is easy. Here's what she did. Okay, well, I'll show you a picture of her. She's over, actually that yellow circle should be over a bit more. The woman holding up her hand like this. Her name's Chantal Vallée, and here's what she did. I decided to hold to team values and did not bring the guilty players. This became even more difficult, though, when it was revealed that 5 players have broken the team rules, including 3 of my 5 starters. So imagine in a basketball game, 3 of your best players. And we went to Argentina, and we got killed. We lost 90-40. They got demolished. Then when they returned to Canada, this is the city where they live in Canada, those players who were left behind, they apologized, they worked even harder, and they helped lead our team to our 4th consecutive national championship. I never had to address these issues with them again. So the reason I share this with you, you may remember the pyramid of success that I showed you yesterday from Coach Wooden. Right near the top, one of the blocks, courage. Courage. The best coaches have the courage to do what they know they need to do. And if you don't have a strong sense of your core values and what matters to you as a team and as a coach, you're blowing in the wind. Well, let's see, I got to think about it, and who is it? And you're thinking about all these other things. If I have strong core values, you weather the storm in a sense, right? I don't care. The hurricane's not going to blow me around. Typhoon doesn't matter. I know what we stand for. The players know what we stand for. There's no decision to make here. You broke the rules. The rules say you're not coming. That's it. And guess what? That Argentina coach respected her a lot more. Said, yeah, I appreciate what you did. I understand what you had to do. And they still got to play a game, and they still learned from that. And she actually went on to win 5 consecutive national championships. Unbelievable. And a lot of it, and guess where she learned how to do this? She was a graduate student in coaching. And in her research, she studied how coaches turn losing programs into winning programs. So she knew what to do, and she had the courage to do it, and it worked. And this was a study that she actually wrote about that. 4 keys to building a championship culture. You enhance your vision. You have a vision. You enhance it. You empower athletes through that process. You teach them important life skills. And then you keep getting better as a coach. And it's all these things that we've talked about in the last few days. And you see it with the best coaches. So it's not... knowing what to do is not hard. Doing it is sometimes hard. But again, that comes back to having the courage to do what you know you need to do as a coach. So you have, we're going to do a little activity here. This is a nice book, a football book, soccer book. And the guy who wrote it works with teams and young athletes, all levels. And he shared an example in this book from Barcelona, one of the most successful football clubs in the world. And they have a saying, "Mais qu'un club," so more than a club. This is something that they use as their core values. We're more than a football club. And so what I'd like you to do now, you have another in your activity booklet. If you go to reflection activity number 6. It's a table, and it shows a list of items, and it says in the second column, we do this well. The third column says we need to do this better. So I'd like you to take a moment. Maybe we can turn the lights up a little bit. I'd like you to take a moment and go down. Do this for you, for your club. Go down this list and put a check mark in either we do it well or we need to do better. So the first item is, our players feel secure and are looked after. Do our players feel like we care about them? Do they feel like this is a safe environment? If you think, yeah, we do that, you check, we do this well. Say, we don't really, I don't think we do that very well, you check that. So take a moment and go down. This is for you and your team, your club, your school. Okay, is there anyone in the room who put, we do well for everything? We do this well for everything. Or almost everything. Felt like, yeah, we do this really, really well. No one put check marks all the way down. Okay, well, that could be good or bad. I guess maybe good in the sense that you're becoming more reflective as a coach, so you're thinking a little bit more about it, and that's okay. In fact, you want to be getting better at all of these things. So it's interesting. One of the conversations I had was related to practice. Our players enjoy practice, enjoy coming to practice, and you could argue, well, if it's hard practice, I don't expect them to enjoy it. My job isn't to make sure they're enjoying practice. I'm trying to help them get better. But in fact, when we talk to athletes, don't mistake hard with enjoyment. Creating the environment where they're stretched and they're pushed and they feel like they're getting better, that's hard, but it's enjoyable too. It's intrinsically motivating. Everyone has that inside them. Everyone wants to get better. So it can be enjoyable and hard. Those two things can be the same. All right, so we'll keep moving. And this is something that I always enjoy sharing with people, this idea of complex family. And this is something that I pulled from other fields. So I worked at UCLA in Los Angeles for a little while, and I was at a place called the International Center for Talent Development. And when I was there, it got me a chance to look at how high-performing groups or cultures work in different environments. And I came across this idea that's called a complex family. And what a complex family is, it's an environment that combines freedom with structure. So we might think of these as two completely different ideas, right? How can you be free and structured at the same time? So let me show you a few examples of this. So as I started to look more into coaching and see, well, do the best coaches create these complex family environments? And what might that look like? So I looked up, did some research on Phil Jackson. He coached Michael Jordan, won championships with that team. Then he also won championships coaching Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. So he actually has a nice book out called 11 Rings. It's a fun book. And he won 11 championships as a coach, 10 as a coach, and actually 11 as a coach, and then he won another one as a player. But what is nice about this book is that he shares how hard it is, how messy it is. Every year was a different group of players. And in fact, he joked at one point, he said, sometimes when people ask me what my occupation is, what my job is, I tell them magician. So, it's hard. It's really hard. And in fact, what we do is, so I looked into what he does and how he built these teams. So a different team every year, yet still winning championships. And in fact, I found these quotes. He said, during practice, I would forcefully assert myself. So when players showed up, world's best players, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, when they showed up to practice, it was very dictatorial. It was very structured. He didn't sit around with Kobe Bryant and say, hey, what do you want to work on today? What do you think of these drills? No. I'm in charge. You come to practice, you listen to me, you do what I say. So very, very structured. If he only did that all the time, he would lose his players. They would lose interest. Anyone would lose interest because they have no ownership of that experience. So the way he counterbalanced structure with freedom is in the games, he let the players play. He would get out of the way, and the games were for the players. It was for them to be free. And this is his own words. Once the game began, I would slip into the background and let the players orchestrate the attack. And there's actually an unwritten rule in the National Basketball Association and the NBA that if a team goes on a 7-0 run, so if the other team gets 7 or 8 points in a row without you scoring, you call a timeout. Timeout. So you intervene, and he didn't do that. And some of the best coaches, same idea. Say, no, let them play. This is their time to play. They'll figure it out if I did a good job in coaching, in practices. And here you see a visual image of that. You see in practice, do what I say. I'm in charge. You listen to me. In game, I'm going to sit back and watch. This is your time. So he balanced structure with freedom. It's both. So I kept digging, looking at more examples and say, what would that look like in other sports? And sure enough, guess who did that? Coach Wooden. Coach John Wooden did that 60 years ago, before we had any of the research and had a label for it. He built a complex family environment. And this is a quote from one of his former players, a guy named Bill Walton, who's a Hall of Famer. And he said there was total structure and complete freedom. He never started practice with the word, what do you guys want to do today? But he never held us back. And this was just from about 3 weeks ago. And I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. Complete structure and complete freedom. Total structure and complete freedom. How can you have both? How can it be black and white? Yes, complete structure and total freedom. So you want to create an environment with structure because everyone wants to be led. Athletes want structure. But if you only have structure, you will get into conflict. So you have to balance the structure with moments of freedom. Structure and freedom. Complex family. And where did that come from? So it came from a study by a guy named Csikszentmihalyi. Big, long last name. If you've ever heard the term flow or being in the zone, it's from this guy. So he did the research on elite performers, musicians, and he came up with the idea of flow, being in the zone. And he did the study with high school students. And he had them, this was in the 1980s, he had they had pagers. You see here a picture, some of you may remember these. And the students were notified 8 times a day. 8 times a day they'd get a little message on the beeper, and they had a journal, and they had to note, what are you doing? Who are you with? What's your focus right now? How enjoyable is what you're doing right now? So he wanted to get he had a hunch that what separates students and athletes who do really well and those who don't is not their intelligence or their parents' income or the neighborhood they grew up in. It's the type of environment they spend their time in every day. Their environments. And he was right. And that was the separator between the students who went on to success and the athletes who went on to success and those who didn't. It was how they spent their time, the environments they spent their time in. And he found that it was what he called a complex family environment. They had moments in their everyday life which were very structured, very disciplined, very, no independent thought. And they also balanced that with moments in their daily life with lots of freedom and lots of choice and lots of ownership. And so when we think about it from a scientific perspective, a complex family is a combination of freedom and structure. And he used these terms differentiation and integration. And these are basic human needs. If you dig into this even more, if you look into psychology and human development, we all have a need to be social and relatable and connect with other people, but we also have a basic need for structure and discipline and order. So we create the best create environments where we do both of those things. And we have some neat research now to even go further on this. When we look at, there's an overrepresentation in many countries of elite athletes from small towns. So 5,000, 10,000, small towns. And I know obviously it doesn't fit Singapore too well, but maybe small neighborhoods, right, or small schools. And we've done some studies in Canada and New Zealand, and we found the same things. So what is it about a small town that allows kids to excel? If you grow up in a small town or a small neighborhood or a small school, you have lots of freedom. You have lots of opportunities to do things on your own and create, but you also have lots of structure. So you have the structure and the freedom. And we see this with, there's a famous coach in the United States right now, a guy named Urban Meyer. He coaches American football. And he's created, so he knows about these ideas, and he's created a leadership program with his athletes around this idea of a complex family. And what he does, when his athletes come to him, when you join his team, there's no freedom. You might be the best athlete in the United States. When you come to his university and play, you start out with no freedom. But you can earn freedom. So you start with all structure, and you can earn freedom depending on your behavior and how you adhere to our core values and our team rules and things like that. So you can move from a child where you have no freedom, it's all structure, to an adult where you have lots of freedom. And it's been very successful for him. And there's another book that came out not too long ago called Creating Innovators, and we talk about innovating as a coach. And we look at, in this book, they looked at how people who are create like the iPad, the iPhone, the scientific discoveries, and a lot of them are high school dropouts. They come from very unorthodox, unusual family environments, but they all share the same thing. They have freedom and structure, and he called it a yes-but environment. So think about it this way. If your athletes come to you and say, hey, coach, today can we try this activity? Instead of saying, no, I have my practice plan here, it says we're doing this. Can you say, yeah, but? So the yes is kind of the freedom part. Yeah, well, okay, maybe. The but is the structure. So you give them some of that freedom, but you shape it to your environment. So yeah, we could do it, but maybe at the end of practice. So there's some freedom within the structure. Last example, and then we'll do an activity here. So these are my two kids. They're now 10 and 13. And whether they like it or not, they're my guinea pigs. So I do experiments on my kids all the time. I learn these things, I read about them, I say, okay, I'm going to try it with my kids. And this is, if you're ever out in California, there's along the coast, there's this great little, best milkshakes in California. And it's a place called the Cool Cat Cafe. And you might see in the bottom corner, there's a sheet of paper, and it says Cool Cat Cafe. And so my kids, whenever we go to restaurants from a very young age, you know, you have kids we often at restaurants, they take the menu and they turn it over and they draw pictures. And I kind of got me, when we were in this moment, I thought, geez, I didn't tell them to do that, but they do this on their own. So they create this kind of freedom on their own. And I was wondering, why, where'd that come from? Well, my two kids at the side here, this is my garage when I moved into our home. This is probably about 8 years ago. And my kids were home for summer break. and they're bored and, doing what kids do. And they come up to Dad and they say, Dad, we want to paint on the walls. So they wanted to paint inside the house on the walls. And so right away, as a parent, you think, no, you're not painting on the walls. But I remember complex family. So I don't want to squash the freedom and the autonomy that they come to me with, but I don't want to let them paint on the walls. And then I started thinking, can I do a yes, but? I said, okay, but. So yeah, but not inside the house. Let's go in the garage, because it was unfinished, and I didn't care if they painted on the walls in the garage. So they started painting, and then we opened the garage doors, and summer break, so all the kids in the neighborhood are riding their bikes and walking around, and every kid that walked by ran into the garage, because they said, whoa, you can paint on the walls in this house, let's go. So every kid, I had a garage full of kids painting all over the walls. And this was all around the garage. All the walls had all these different things. And it's those moments where your athletes come to you wanting freedom and autonomy and input and ownership, where you can turn that into a yes, but moment. So instead of saying no, or the other option is yeah, and you give them complete freedom, you can say yeah, but. So yes, but I'm going to give you the freedom, but under these conditions. So I give you the freedom and the structure. So if you turn to reflection number 7 in your workbook, there's a little activity, and you could either jot some notes down or just discuss it at your table. How well do you think you balance freedom and structure in your team, or at your club, or at your school? Do you have a complex family environment with your team, your club, or your school? Just take a couple minutes and you can discuss it at your table. Okay, let's bring it back in. So this is another important concept to keep in mind. Complex family environment. Do I create an environment in my school, my club, my team, where athletes have some freedom, but they also have rules and structure? They need both. And when we create that kind of environment, it's more motivational for the athletes. They're more excited and engaged. They enjoy those environments more. They work harder. Last part on critical reflection, we're going to look at core values and standards. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but we're going to do an activity related to it, and I'll show you a few examples. This is one of the top flight demonstration teams in the world, called the Blue Angels. And if you ever get a chance, if you're in America or they travel around the world, you get a chance to see the Blue Angels, definitely worth going to see. And these are the best pilots, arguably, in the world. These are the pilots who go on to become astronauts in many cases. And I had a chance to have one of these pilots in a class one time, and I learned some really interesting things about core values and standards. So just for fun, I'd like you to put your arms out like this. I'm not going to make you fly. Pretend you're you put your arms out and then pretend you're flying. Go. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, you put your arms out. Now, when they just hold them out for a second. When they fly about 800 kilometers an hour, upside down, and 500 feet off the ground, and they have a jet at either end. So at either end of your fingertips, they'd have another jet. That's how close those jets are right now, okay? Put your arms down. When they build a lot of trust with their team and they feel very confident in their teammate, they fly 18 inches apart, shoulder to shoulder. That's how close those jets are, okay? And every once in a while, every few years, you'll hear about one of these pilots dying because they black out sometimes. The G-forces are so intense, they lose consciousness and they black out because they don't use oxygen masks, because they change the cockpit so they can fly really crazy maneuvers. So when I looked at this example, and I had this athlete in my class, he was sharing with me what they do to build the environment of trust. You literally have to trust that the person next to you is not going to kill you. So you have to really trust what people are doing around you. And I asked them to explain how they build that kind of environment. So number one is they select people who are really good at what they do. But when they're together, after every flight, So think of your situation. After every practice and every competition, they come together as a team and they do a very formal review. So all the pilots, all the people who work, the ground staff who work on the ground, the people who support them, they all sit in a room together every single time they fly. They sit in a room and they go around the room. Every person in the room identifies one thing they can get better at. So their goal is to have a perfect flight while realizing that there will never be a perfect flight. So the value and the vision is aim for excellence and perfect flight, but be humble enough to realize you'll never get a perfect flight. And they go around the room and they identify one thing they can get better at. So everyone has to commit to one thing they'll get better at. Then they say, I'll fix it. And then they finish with this statement, glad to be here. So what that statement does, it forces them to make it clear to the rest of the group that I'm just honored and glad to be a part of this team. So remember, these are the best in the world. They say, I need to get a little bit better at this. I was off on my takeoff a little bit. I will fix it. I'm Wade Gilbert. I'm glad to be here. And they go all the way around the room and they do this. And so you think about how you create that environment where you identify what your values are, but then you reinforce your values into everyday behaviors. And so we want to start with our values. I shared this with you the other day. But we want to connect our values to our athletes' values and make them our values. So what are the values for us as a program, as a team? We shared with you the All Blacks. Okay, they have this value, better people make better All Blacks. And some of their core values, these are three of the big ones. Humility. So you have to be vulnerable. And we're going to finish with vulnerability today. Collective accountability. No rules, but lots of expectations. And I see this with a lot of coaches. They have lots of rules, lots of team rules. If you're late to practice, this happens. If you don't pay attention, this happens. You know, all these rules with consequences. But the best programs I've been around, they have no rules. So I didn't sign up to be a babysitter. What I want to do is make sure we have clear values and high standards. So we have a very clear sense of how you act around here. But I'm not here to babysit and enforce a bunch of rules and discipline a bunch of people. We have values and standards, and we have collective accountability. And then trust. Trust that you'll do your job, I'll do my job, the people around you will do their job. So this is an activity that All Blacks do every year. And I'd like you just to take a moment. It's activity number 8. And this is a good one for you personally to do. Just take a moment, and I'd like you to write down the answer to this question. So if you had your team, if you did this, because they do it as a team. They come together when they have their new team every year. And they say, okay, if we asked other people that we respect, we ask other people that we value to describe, the kind of program that we have, what would they say? What would you want them to say? So in essence, what would you want other people to say about your team, your program, your club? So take a moment and just write that out. What would you want people you respect to say about your team? Okay, Josh here has a microphone. If anyone wants a free parking pass, put your hand up. Okay, Josh, you have to tell us what you wrote, though. Okay. Anybody willing to share what they wrote for a free parking pass? Okay. There's another one, Josh, at the back.
Free parking pass.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Luke. Well, if you want the comments from other people about your team, you would like to hear both the good comments as well as the bad comments. And of course, if you're working as a team, you would like to hear the comments about whether the team is performing as a team or not. So, other than that, of course, you choose the people whom you respect so they can give you an answer that is very critical and yet fair. You won't want to pick some people who are very biased to put comments on that or about your team. So, core values. Well, if we are asking for core values, then you should ask somebody who's in the line and probably familiar with what you're asking for.
Okay. Josh, we'll do one at the back. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Josh, there is... put your hand up again, sir. Yeah, you see him back there? Okay. And then we'll move on to another activity here. We'll hear one more. Oh, he's got it. Okay.
Hi. I just put down a few bullet points. I'd want people to think it was fun for the kids. I'm teaching kids.
Yeah.
So it's fun, that they're having some learning and development, build some character. It's a fitness activity, and that hopefully it builds some lessons for life.
Fantastic. So there's no right or wrong answer here, but there is a right answer for you. So for your team, for your environment, your school, your club, your context, what would I want people to say about our program? Very well done. Thanks for sharing. So we want to think about, again, what matters to my athletes, what motivates them to play when we think about our values. And I'll show you this example. So we can write core values, we can write mission statements, we can write things and put them on the wall at the school or put them on t-shirts. But if the athletes have no input into that process, it means nothing to them. It's just something I wrote. And this is an example from our archery U.S. Olympic Training Center near San Diego, California. It's arguably the top archery facility in the world. It's a phenomenal place. And so I was there working with the team, and you walk into this building, and the first thing you see on the wall is this image, this picture on the wall. And it says, to be disciplined, so basically it's what are our values? To be disciplined athletes of great character, challenging ourselves to achieve excellence in the pursuit of glory. As soon as you walk in, so best facility in the world, you walk in, you see this. And I watched the athletes come in all day, met with the athletes and the coaches. I never once saw anyone stop, look at that, touch it, read it, do anything. So basically it was meaningless. And I asked the athletes and the coaches about it. I said, who wrote that? Where did that come from? And the head coach said, oh, well, the people who gave us all the money for the facility liked this, and they wanted us to put it on the wall. So, okay, I understand now. So do you use that with your team? If I asked your athletes, would they be able to tell me that or what that means? He goes, oh, no, they don't know. So I said, okay, every day they walk into this facility, this is a moment for you to reinforce our core values. And you have something on the wall that means nothing. You could write it in Mandarin, wouldn't matter. It doesn't mean anything to anybody walking in there. So what if you ask your athletes, what should we put on the wall? What matters to us? And this is what the athletes wrote. So when you ask the athletes, it looks very different, doesn't it? The Women's Excellence Program values optimism by hunting the good stuff. We commit to discipline by persevering towards our focused goals. We are determined to improve and achieve excellence as a team. We create an atmosphere of support and encouragement, selflessness and respect. They put a bullseye, a target. We are one. Okay, now I'll go back here, take a look again. There's what we think the values are and what matters. Here's what the athlete thinks or matters. And actually this man in the corner here, he's number 1 in the world right now. He's world champion, and the woman's been to 5 Olympics. She's one of the top archers. So the key here is what I want you to think about is you could write these things and you can have values, but unless the athletes have some input into that, it will mean nothing. It will mean nothing. You have to have opportunities, whether they're 6 years old or 20 years old, they have to have an opportunity to contribute to what matters to us. What should it look like for us? I shared this with you. I'm going to move into a little video here. We have to tell them what right looks like. So I'm going to show you a little video. This is a guy named Gino Auriemma. He's one of the top basketball coaches in the world at the moment. He coaches at the University of Connecticut. He's our women's national team coach as well. I'm just going to show you. It's just a couple of minutes. And I want you to ask yourself as you go through here, what do you think his core values are for his team when you watch this? Whoops, let's go back here.
Recruiting enthusiastic kids is harder than it's ever been. Because every kid watches TV and they watch the NBA or they watch Major League Baseball or they watch the NFL, whatever sport they watch, WNBA, it doesn't matter. And what they see is people just being really cool. So they think that's how they're going to act. And they haven't even figured out which foot to use as a pivot foot, and they're going to act like they're really good players. You see it all the time. You see it at every AAU tournament. You see it every high school game. So recruiting kids that are like really upbeat and loving life and love the game and have this tremendous appreciation for when their teammates do something well, that's hard. That's hard. It's really hard. So on our team, me, my coaching staff, we put a huge premium on body language. And if your body language is bad, you will never get in the game. Ever. I don't care how good you are. If somebody says, well, you just benched Stewie for, 35 minutes in the Memphis game a couple years ago. Yeah, I did. Oh, that was to motivate her for the South Carolina game the following Monday. No, it wasn't. Stewie was acting like a 12-year-old. So I put her on the bench and said, sit there. It doesn't matter on our team. Now, the other coaches might say, well, you can do that because you got 3 other, All-Americans. I get that. I understand that. But I'd rather lose than watch kids play the way some kids play. I'd rather lose. And they're allowed to get away with just whatever. And they're always thinking about themselves. Me, 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 me. I didn't score, so why should I be happy? I'm not getting enough minutes. Why should I be happy? That's the world that we live in today, unfortunately. And kids check the scoreboard sometimes because they're going to get yelled at by their parents if they don't score enough points. Don't get me started. So when I look at my team, they know this. When I watch game film, I'm checking what's going on the bench. And if somebody's asleep over there, somebody doesn't care, somebody's not engaged in the game, they will never get in the game. Ever. And they know that. They know I'm not kidding.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do, just take a moment at your table. What do you think his core values are with his team? What are his core values? Okay, what do you think the core values are for that team?
Hi. So first up, we came with commitment, and that's not just as for the team, but also selfless commitment. We talked about loyalty to the team as well. Also discipline. He kind of talked about that at the start in a really roundabout way, and respect for others. Excellent.
Very well done. Anyone else want to share something else maybe that they picked out of that? Anything different? Those are some big ones. Okay, we have one over here.
I'm John Boone again. Sorry if you have to listen to me again. Now, I remembered when the ex-president Obama, when he was elected, he said something which struck me until now, until today. He said, yes, we can. This is one what is called value that I admire. And when I teach the children, sometimes I tell them, what must you say? Yes, we can for everything that we do. That way we can get a lot of things done. Thank you.
Yes, very nice. Yeah. Very well done. Okay, so we see some examples of how coaches use core values. So in his example, this coach here, he's sharing how his players know that he's always watching. Even when they're not in the game, he's watching their body language because that should be an indicator of our core values. And then you'll be disciplined for not upholding the core values. In their case, they won't get to play. This is an example from a volleyball coach, and he made it very clear. So he hands this out to his team. Said, these are what good teammates do, kind of do's and don'ts. Good teammates are open to change. They have a can-do attitude. We heard the coach just share, yes, we can. They look for challenge. They are good listeners. They make decisions easily. They bring good energy to a team. They work hard. So he shares this with his teams so they can see what to do, what not to do. So it's very clear. When you do these things, you're being a good teammate. When you do these other things over here, you're not being a good teammate. So we want to get to the point where we have a clear sense of our core values, but we also connect them to very specific behaviors. This is what it looks like. And then we need to reinforce those things. So the next activity, it's reflection activity number 9. And it's one page that has this table on it. And I'd like you just to take a moment. Can you identify three core values that you have with your team? What are those 3 core values? And then what would the action statement is, what does that look like? So if you say, we have a core value of work ethic. We work hard. What would be an example of that? How would my athletes know what work hard means? Okay, we have an example that we're going to share here. All right, let's hear the example at the back.
Hi, I'm Wei Yin. I'm coaching badminton right now at UWC East. I wrote 3 values. The first one is accountability in terms of being punctual on time because the session is 90 minutes, quite short, and being accountable for being absent or being late in communicating. So I stress a lot on communication between players and coach. Second part is being a team player is very critical. Sometimes we have a lot of players, so we need to take turns for courts. And the other one is nobody likes to sit on the bench in being an alternate or reserve player. So I always use the word service. I would say you are serving as an alternate player today, but your role is to support the team and cheer the team on. The last part is positive work ethics. In terms of keeping and setting up the badminton stands, the nets, and the shuttlecocks. I always tell them that you must treat the equipment well so they will treat you well. And if they kick equipment or they abuse equipment, then I will have a chat with them. So that's one part of positive work ethics. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Yeah. So that's the kind of activity that we'd want to do, and we can spend a lot more time when I'm working with coaches. This might be an hour just on this one page, where we work on what are your values, and then what will that look like? How will you explain that to your athletes? And then they might go and test it, and then we meet again, and we might revise them. It might be 2 or 3 meetings. So this is something that you need to invest time in. And once you get a clear sense of your values and your athletes understand what those values are and what they look like, then you go back to that example of creating the environment. So you're creating the right kind of environment for them to behave the way you want them to behave. You're creating the right type of container, in a sense, for that water. So I'm going to show you a little video here, an example of a fairly well-known coach in the United States right now who's going to share with you his core values and how he explains them to his athletes.
Before we get into what you're building up there, because it's remarkable, you can't talk to anybody that doesn't know about your Row the Boat theme. And I know that it comes from a very special place. So do you want to kind of talk about where that idea originated for you?
Yeah, first and foremost, Row the Boat has nothing to do with a Bronco, has nothing to do with really adapting or relating anything to do with wins or truly football. It's a never give up mantra. Row the Boat, February 9th, 2011, lost my second son to a heart condition. And I tell everybody this because it's a real story, right? And I'm a real coach. I've been through a divorce, been remarried, I've lost a child. I've been through a lot in 30-some years, and I like to share that with my players. But it originated after he passed away, and as you hold your son as he passes away, your whole life changes. What you believe in, how you've believed in it, what you've done up until that point, where you're going to go, and how you're going to live your life all changes. But Row the Boat is really my second son's life as I continue to live his life for him. It's his life. And it's a never give up mantra that has to do strictly with life or adversity or handling success, never giving up. And it means a few things. When you row a boat, you're rowing. Don't ever look at me and paddle, okay? That's completely different, all right? We're rowing, right? Your back is to the future, which is something you cannot control, nor can you actually see. You have to trust the person in front of you that you're looking at, that they're doing their job, rowing at the same speed, same efficiency as you are. But that's the future. You can't control that. You don't know if there's rocks, waterfalls, stormy seas. You don't know what's ahead of you. You're rowing in the present, which is the only thing you can actually control and the only thing you can actually have an impact on. You either choose to take your oars and put them back in the boat and stop, or you put them back in the water and continue to go. But you're looking at the past, which is the only thing you can actually learn from, but you can't change. There's three parts to row in a boat. There's an oar, there's a boat, and there's a compass. The oar is the energy you bring to your life, your family, your team, your spiritual life, your personal life, your social life. It's the energy. Energy breeds love. If you love something, you're going to put a lot of energy into it. The second part is the boat. The boat is a sacrifice. What are you willing to give up for something that you never had? The more you sacrifice and the more you give, our program is about two things, serving and giving. The more you give, the bigger the boat gets, the more people you can put in it, and the sturdier the boat gets. You can go through any storms, you can fall off waterfalls, you can do a lot more when you have a sturdy boat. But there's going to be people that want to put holes in that boat. There's going to be people who want to throw you out of that boat eventually as a coach. And then last but not least is the compass, which is the most important part for our young people, and that's who you surround yourself with. Your compass is the direction of where your boat is actually traveling. But you're traveling in the direction of people that you're actually surrounded by. And you got to be okay with your circle getting smaller as your life goes on about the decisions you make. So again, it's our version, it's my son's life, it's my obligation as a parent from now on to live his life through my life, and to make sure people are aware that he couldn't live his life for himself, so I have to live his through a never give up type attitude.
You have what you call Bronconese. What does family mean to you?
Family, we all throw around family. I think everybody in here that's a coach or even works in a certain company, you all feel like you have family. But as a football coach, I have 125 guys that all come from different backgrounds. I have people with mom and dad. I have people with just mom. I have people with just dad. I have people that don't have any parents. I have people that grew up in an orphanage. We all have those types of issues, and we throw this word out, family, but it means something different to every single one of us. So how can we be all on the same page if we haven't truly defined what family really is inside your culture? So we define it very simply. Remember, I taught 6th grade social studies. I have an elementary education degree. I'm not a very smart guy. I just call it as it is. So we define family as very simple. Forget about me. I love you. That's it. And that's what a family does. Now, as a football team, we talk about love. You know, this isn't the Beatles show. This is a football team, right? We're tough and burly and hit each other. But we define love even to that part, because some of our players don't think they've ever experienced love. So love is sacrifice. If I give up something of myself and I give it to you, I'm showing that I have energy for you. I must love you. And let's start there as a basis. So if that's how we define it, our program's really not about you. It's about how we can serve other people to make our family bigger.
All right, so there you see an example of a very successful coach at the moment in the United States. He's becoming more and more famous as he takes this type of core value system with him to different programs. And I like that. Forget about me, I love you. Family. So we want to create that kind of family environment. Often we talk about that as coaches, right? Our team's a family. We need to work together as a family. Again, think if you're working with a 10-year-old, what does that mean? Family. It means something different to everybody, so you have to spell it out. This is what family means. This is what it looks like. So you have core values, and then you have action statements, and you reinforce that, and you use that in your environment. You create that right kind of environment. So we have about 25 minutes left here, 25, 30 minutes. There's no way we're going to get through everything that I thought we might cover today, and that's okay. We're making progress, and we're planting seeds. and we'll keep growing with these things. So I did want to touch on development and wellness as a coach. So we will touch on two of these things, and I think we'll be full for today. So when we think about athlete development, this is a big one. When we think about reflecting and using reflection as a coach to help our athletes get better. How do we help them get better? And when we think about learning is the process of being able to do something, skill, behavior, change. And Coach Wooden, John Wooden, used to like to say, you haven't taught until they've learned. And so until you can show me you can do it, you haven't learned it. So we want to reflect on how we can get better at helping that behavior change. So when we start with our athletes, we should start with the end in mind. When we work in our season, we have our goals for the season. We should start with asking ourselves, what are we trying to achieve? What is the target? What is the end destination? What should my athletes be able to do by the end of this season? And so if you go to page that has reflection activity number 10, I just want you to try and identify 5 things. 5 things, so when you go back with your teams, what are 5 things that your athletes should be able to do, that you would want them to be able to do by the end of their instruction with you, the end of this year or the end of this season? What are 5? So think of an athlete or a team that you're working with. What are 5 things that you would want them to be able to do by the end of your time with them, your training sessions with them? Okay, we'll come back in. So again, if we were doing this for more time, I might sit down with you for a half an hour, 30 minutes, and really ask, let's make a list as long as we can of all those things that I would want my athletes to be able to do after this season or this series of training. And this gives us focus and allows us to design practices that specifically address those things you're writing down. That's what you should be practicing. If you're telling me this is what your athlete should be able to do, if I go watch a practice, I should see you working on those things, right? To build off of that, how can we help our athletes learn those things? How can we help them stay motivated and stay engaged as we're trying to teach them these things we're writing down? And often when we have skills or things we want them to be able to do, there's pieces to those skills. So I was speaking with a sailing coach, and she was talking about starts and stops and different techniques for sailing upwind or downwind. Each one of those things you're writing on your paper right now probably have a bunch of little things that need to be done to be able to do that one thing. So it's like a puzzle, right? So if you're saying, I want them to be able to make a shot or execute a skill, there's probably a lot of little pieces that they need to be able to do in order to do the big skill. So we think of it like a puzzle. We won't do this right now, but you could try this sometimes when you look at, or later, when you look at what you wrote down, you could go underneath there and write, what are the things that they need to be able to do in order to do this big thing? What are the little pieces here? So I just see the big puzzle, but what are all the little pieces of the puzzle that they need to be able to do? So if a coach, the sailing coach says they need to be able to understand the technique for sailing downwind, well, they probably need agility, they probably need balance, they probably need decision-making skills, they need to know how to read the wind and relation to teammates. There's a lot of little pieces that go underneath being able to sail downwind. So we think of it as a puzzle. So you see the picture of the puzzle, the completed puzzle, but what are all the little pieces? Because if I'm not teaching them the little pieces, you'll never get the puzzle. So I'm skipping ahead a little bit in the interest of time here. Okay. This is a good one I think you'll enjoy. So in terms of helping our athletes develop those skills, we also want to make sure, I shared this with you yesterday, this idea of keeping them in stretch moments, stretch goals, so it's just beyond what they can do right now, but with support from a coach, they might be able to touch it, and then we keep moving it. So we want to be in that balance between things they can already do and things they can't do, but we don't want them to be too easy or too difficult, so we call that the golden rule of flow, or the kind of the zone of athlete development, optimal zone. I'll share a story of how we can do that. This is a guy named Karch Karai. He was voted the all-time best volleyball player ever. He won Olympic medals in beach volleyball, indoor volleyball. He won national titles. And so he became the head coach of our national women's team in the United States a few years back. And this is a picture of him and his team in Italy at the World Championships. And this was the first World Championships that they've won. The United States women's team, they've always been very, very good. They've never won a World Championship. This is the first one. And so a couple of weeks after that event, 2 weeks actually after that event, he was in a class with me. He was sitting at the table. And I was teaching a class. And I was trying to teach the whole time. I'm thinking, that's Karch Karai. Oh, man, I want to talk to Karch Karai. So we're going through the session, and I asked him about how he did what he did and how he took that team to that next level. Because they were always really good, but they never were able to win that world championship. And this is his handwritten notes on his philosophy, his coaching philosophy. And you notice I circled at the top, job 1, growth mindset. Mistakes, and you might notice in that box it says mistakes, ... ugly. And so I asked him to explain that. And he said, okay, Wade, so when I took over that team, I had the world's best athletes, and I see it even with 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, it doesn't matter the age group, but if you walk into a practice environment, and when I walked into that environment with that team, I saw a lot of people trying to not make mistakes. So mistakes were bad, right? Mistakes were ugly. And that you don't get better when you do that. You're just trying to maintain what you can do. But you'll never get great or really develop your full potential if you're afraid to make mistakes. You're always trying to show that you can do it. And so he said, I had to change the mindset of the team. And so these are his words. Said I had to create, again, environment. I had to create the right environment so that they had permission, not only permission, but they were encouraged and required to make mistakes. Said, you better be making mistakes in practice or you aren't getting better. He said, Wade, if you came to watch us practice, so world champions, best team in the world, he said, if you came to one of our practices, you would see what I call an ugly practice. Lots of mistakes. Players making mistakes all over. And he said, you'd be scratching your head going, wow, this is the best team in the world? They look awful. He said, that's by design. They have to be making mistakes, or I kick them out of the gym. You're not here to show me what you can do. You're here to show me how you're getting better at things you can't do. But you have to support that as a coach. So if we yell at them when they make a mistake, we're teaching them mistakes are ugly, right? We have to encourage them and support them to make mistakes. And so it's this difference between what we might call a fixed mindset, where the focus is on proving your ability. And you see this with young kids very often because they get it trained into their mind in school, in life. Mistakes are ugly. Don't make mistakes. It's got to be perfect. You know, a kid brings home a test from school. If they fail, that's bad. You made a lot of mistakes. And they get punished. So they get very young age, they learn that mistakes are bad. And so they spend a lot of time trying to prove their abilities so they don't grow. And what the coach had to do with the national team was shift that environment to one of a focus on improving ability. And that's a growth mindset. And you may have heard of that term, growth mindset. And that's really what happened with that coach, where that light bulb went off. Because when he took over the team, he read a book called Growth Mindset, written by a professor at Stanford University. And he said it really got him thinking, wow, you know, we really spend a lot of time as coaches punishing mistakes. So why would an athlete ever take a chance and make a mistake? So we need to change the whole environment where mistakes are beautiful. You have to be making mistakes, and I'm going to punish you if you don't make mistakes. Because I want to shift that environment from a focus on proving what you can do to a focus on improving what you can do. Fixed to growth. And I put this a picture of Massa's son. He showed the video yesterday. So he had a coach, the first video, where the coach made him cry. He had a coach who was punishing him for making mistakes. Fixed mindset. So why would Mass's son ever take a chance to try a new shot, to try a new angle, to try something different? Because he knows this guy's going to yell at me. Moved him to Australia to a coach who had a growth mindset. Encouraged him to make mistakes, to take chances, to take risks, to grow. So we want to keep our kids as much as possible in this environment where we focus on improving ability and encourage them to take chances and to make mistakes. So you can just talk this out at your table. Just take a minute. I want you, activity number 11. How do you respond when your athletes make a mistake? Talk about it at your table. All right, so come on back in. So again, we're kind of moving a little quick here. We could have a lot of discussion on this one. And if you, I don't have a picture of it here, but if you do want to get the book, it's called Growth Mindset. The title of the book is Growth Mindset, and it is a really good read. Will help you with your kids and your own life as a coach, definitely. Okay, so come on back in. Okay, so I'm gonna move ahead, and I will share these slides with Troy and whatnot. And a lot of these things are built on the principles that I have in the book. And I'm not here to sell the book. I just want to let you know that there's a lot. We're not going to cover everything in the book. So we're picking and choosing as best we can to give you some of the key principles. Okay. I want to finish, because we only have about 10 minutes here, I want to finish on your wellness as a coach. Okay. So we go right here, support network. Yeah. How can I stay energized as a coach? So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've covered ways to get better at noticing, reflective practice, athlete development, how we respond to our athletes, our core values. We covered a lot of material. So we're going to finish with wellness as a coach. So I used that example yesterday, when you fly on a plane and they say, in case of an emergency, secure your mask before you secure someone else's. This is where we're going to finish. How can I make sure that I'm securing my mask as a coach before I try and secure my athlete's mask? I need to charge my batteries. And really, to become a great coach, we want to make sure that we build a support network around us, but a support network of the right kind of people. We want the right kind of people around us to help sustain us. Life is hard. It's hard enough on its own without people sucking energy out of your life and your team. So we want to surround ourselves with people who bring energy to us and our team. And I'll share an example of that with you. This is another championship coach, a collegiate coach in the United States, volleyball coach. And he won a championship early in his career. And most coaches are very driven. You're independent, you're driven, you're confident people. And you have a tendency to want to do it yourself. I can do it on my own. I'll just work harder, I can do it. And that's a recipe for burnout as a coach. You need to be vulnerable. You need to let people in to support you and build you and keep you fresh. And so he's a coach who won early, thought, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing, I can do it on my own. And he experienced a lot of drop-off, burnout, anxiety, frustration. And he normally, what would happen then, a coach would leave. But he had people around him who said, hold on, coach, if you let us in, if you let us help you, if you let us help recharge your batteries, I think we can do great things again. So he had a moment where he realized, I need to be vulnerable. I need to let people help me. That's okay. That's not a weakness. That's a strength. And when he did that, he kind of had a resurgence in his career and ended up winning another championship. And he said, I know for a fact the reason that I'm successful again as a coach is because I was vulnerable enough to let people help me. Okay? So how do we fuel your journey as a coach? It's just like you wouldn't drive your car on empty. Why are you going to coach on empty? You need to have some strategies in place to help you keep your tank full so that you can fuel your athletes. Same idea. So when we think about our athletes, we provide a lot of support to our athletes, whether it's at the school level, Olympic level, doesn't matter. We have tutors, we have nutritionists, we have people with strength and conditioning. We have all these specialists and people around the athlete. So you think of the athlete in the middle of the circle. We put all this support So all these people, parents, administrators, officials, coaches, friends, teammates, but all these people around them, basically, they're all filling the tank for the athlete. Well, who's filling the coach's tank? Who's in the bubbles around the coach? And coaching is a profession or a hobby or a craft that is very isolating. It is normal for coaches at all levels to feel lonely, isolated, frustrated, depressed, tired. That's normal. So how can we build, and you're doing it here, how can we build an environment around us to help us stay fresh? So we're going to do one activity here, and I'm going to show you a video. So with this activity, you'll see activity number 14. And you go to this page that looks like this. It has this image on it, reflection activity number 14. I challenge you right now to put as many names as you can in those bubbles. Can you fill out all those bubbles with people who support you as a coach, people who fuel your tank as a coach? I'm going to give you a couple minutes and challenge you to have a name in as many of those bubbles as possible. And it could be people at your table, right? Maybe people you just met today or yesterday. Okay, so come on back in. I'm going to show you one last little video here to reinforce something that's important. Show you a couple. We'll be like 5 minutes and we'll be done here. So we want to make sure that we surround ourselves with a support team and we allow these people to help us. Invite us in and allow them to help us. These are some fun books that I've come across in the past that reinforce this idea of supporting each other and allowing people to come in and to be vulnerable. And in fact, one of my coaches loved this book, the yellow book. If you haven't seen this one, it's called The Energy Bus. And you could look this up online. John Gordon, he works with a lot of teams now in America. And it's a story. It's a fable about a man who has a flat tire and he has to take the bus to work. And every day he decides who he's going to let on his bus. So you are the driver of your bus, and you decide who's going to sit on the bus with you. And you want to kick people off the bus who drain energy and suck energy off of you and your team, and you want to invite people on the bus who bring energy, right? And so I'll show you one last video and we'll be done. We won't do this activity, but these are the criteria that when I do this in longer periods of time in a class, you fill out that sheet with all the names and then you grade each of those people. So how good are these people you put in your list at fueling your tank? Are they people you really want on your bus? And so do they do these types of things? Do they bring energy? Do they exude positive energy? Do they have drive? Can I trust them? Are they accountable? Are they good listeners? Do they show positive body language? And then we finish by grading ourselves. Are you worthy of being on someone else's bus? How would you score on this? So if you have a whole team of people around you who look like this, you're going to have a really fun coaching career. You're going to have a lot more fun, a lot more energy. You're going to enjoy it more. And guess what? Your athletes are going to enjoy it more because they're going to see that, right? So I'll finish with this little video. This is another book that a coach shared with me. A lot of coaches now, and actually an athlete shared it with me first. And it's a woman named Brene Brown. And she has nothing to do with sports. She's not a sports scientist or a coach. But she's done a lot of research. She's at the University of Texas, and she's done a lot of research on how we connect with people and how we show empathy, not sympathy, but how we show empathy to people. So I'm going to show you this little video here, and it'll connect to this. So this is where we'll finish. You're going to see it's a 2-minute video where she's going to share a lesson. It's an animated lesson. So she's speaking in the back, and it's an animated lesson talking about what it means, the difference between empathy and sympathy, and what it means to be vulnerable, and how we can show that to people, and how we can bring people in who show that to us. And guess what? That's guess what? So it connects back to good coaching, because empathy and vulnerability relates directly to courage. Having the courage to be vulnerable, to let people onto your bus and let them help you and stay fresh as a coach. And that's one of the key things that Coach Wooden always talked about, and that's why we have it in a pyramid. Courage, having the courage. So let's just take a quick look at this one, and this is where we'll finish today.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, so this is a good place for us to finish when we think about what we're trying to do in this session and these events. We want to get better as a coach. We want to help our athletes get better, but we need to be vulnerable. We need to learn how to share and connect with people. And I'm going to finish with this poem. So this is a poem that one of Coach Wooden's favorite poems. And the lesson he would want to share with you, the takeaway, is the greatest message, the greatest thing you can do as a coach is model the things that you've learned here in the last few days. Your actions are the best teacher. What you do on a regular, everyday basis, that's what athletes are going to learn the most from. Not what you tell them, not what you show them, not what you put on a wall somewhere. It's your daily actions. So he would always recite this when he gave talks. No written word, no spoken plea can teach our youth what they should be, nor all the books on all the shelves. It's what the teachers are themselves. Your daily actions, you're the model for your athletes. That's where we're finished. Thank you.